I would like to take the time to address something here. The Kansas City Chiefs are not a perfect team. But that said, they're one of 4 teams remaining, and one of those 4 teams has to win the Super Bowl. If you were to handicap those odds, what odds would you give the Kansas City Chiefs? I would give them above 25%. And I think that despite the fact that they're not a perfect, here's one of the things that kind of, like, I don't want to say it irritates me, but I guess I just don't understand it. We have seen teams win the Super Bowl every year of our lives. And in our memory, what we do is we retrofit that team with perfection. Because it's so hard to win a Super Bowl, they must have been nearly flawless in their attempt to do so. That's never been the case. So I think that in the Kansas City Chiefs commentor sphere, in the Chiefs YouTubosphere, Chiefs tube, if you will, a lot of times the problems get highlighted, and that's understandable because we have to have something to talk about, and it gets really boring to come on here every day and say, hey, guys, the Kansas City Chiefs won. Did you see that? Patrick Mahomes had a couple outstanding throws. I don't know if you have noticed. Xavier Worthy, pretty fast. Kareem Hunt falls forward. Those things get difficult to talk about after a while, especially when the Kansas City Chiefs have had 23 days off between their final meaningful regular season game and that first preseason game, or first playoff game, against the Texans. But as we gear up to watch the 7th consecutive AFC Championship game that the Kansas City Chiefs have been a part of, it's worth talking about the flaws. In an article titled Most Concerning Flaw for Each Divisional Round Winner, Top Off-Season Need for Each Eliminated Team from NFL.com, Jeffrey Chidia says the following. We're down to the final 4 of the NFL postseason. There will be 2 rematches to decide who plays in Super Bowl licks, as the Bills will take on the Chiefs and the Commanders will face the Eagles. Absolutely wild that we have the Commanders here. I kind of hope they make it to the Super Bowl. In fact, I definitely hope they make it to the Super Bowl. It would just be so outstanding to see. It's the 9th opportunity to see Josh Allen's and Patrick Mahomes give us a game filled with suspense and jaw-dropping plays. It's also the 3rd time to witness the league's newest superstar, Washington quarterback Jayden Daniels, competing against the best collection of talent this season, that being the roster Philadelphia assembled. The great thing about this time of the year is that there's really no need for hype anymore. The games sell themselves, as we already know the enormity of the stakes involved. That's why part 2 of the first Read Divisional Round edition is going to veer away from conventional discussion about the championship game previews. Instead, we're going to talk about the weaknesses that could ruin the dreams of those advancing, as well as the top offseason priority for each team that was eliminated over the weekend. Here's what comes to mind. So that kind of sets the table. Basically, the argument is being set up of why the Kansas City Chiefs might not have greater than a 25% chance to be the team that wins the Super Bowl. Remaining Super Bowl contenders, seed 1 Kansas City Chiefs, 16-2. Golly, that's a pretty record. Biggest weakness? The defense isn't as dominant as it looks. Now, I'm just going to stop right there and say that we have to marvel at this. From where this team started when Brett Veach became the general manager, and it was kind of looked at as Patrick Mahomes versus the world, right? The defense not being as dominant as it looks is a phrase I didn't think I would hear, especially after Patrick Mahomes signed his second contract, meaning that Patrick Mahomes is accounting for a very large portion of the team's salary cap, which insists that a team build through the draft, and the Kansas City Chiefs have. The Chiefs won their second straight Super Bowl. So after this, I have 3 big points that I want to talk through for this idea. But the Chiefs won their second straight Super Bowl last season, largely because they had a defense that could carry this team when the offense faltered. That simply hasn't been the case this offseason. As good as the overall numbers looked in the regular season, Kansas City ranked 4th in points allowed and 9th in yards yielded. There were simply too many times when opponents produced big plays and moved the football against this defense. We're not just talking about accomplished quarterbacks such as Tampa Bay's Baker Mayfield, another wild comment if you go back just a couple seasons, or Buffalo's Josh Allen having big days against this unit. Lesser talents like Carolina's Bryce Young and Las Vegas's Aiden O'Connell did similar things. The Chiefs' 23-14 divisional round win over Houston was even more proof of this weakness. Was it? I just have to interrupt because was it? This number here, that 14, that's how many points the Texans scored, right? But really, it was 12. And I don't think anyone would argue that point. Yes, Kansas City recorded 8 sacks. To just throw this out there as if it is a willy-nilly statistic, sacking an opposing quarterback 8 times in a game, and you are just saying, well, yeah, but a majority of which came when the Texans were forced into obvious passing downs in the 4th quarter. No, Mr. Chidia. A majority of which came when the Texans had to make a play. You can say that it was obvious passing downs in the 4th quarter. When else would you rather have a sack? When else would you rather the Kansas City Chiefs have sacked a quarterback? If I'm the defensive coordinator, I'll take it then, please. This is just sort of a weird way to say this sentence. A strange lens through which to see this statistic. The Chiefs also surrendered 149 rushing yards, allowed Houston to convert 10 of 17 third down opportunities. Third downs are going to come back later. We're going to talk about that. And gave up a scoring drive in the 3rd quarter that lasted more than 10 minutes. There's 2 ways to look at that. Yes, the Texans put together a substantial drive and ultimately scored a touchdown. Ultimately scored their touchdown. But what we could also do with that sentence is understand that the Texans, who are a big play offense, could not rip off one of those big plays. The Texans came into contest with only one of their top 3 wide receivers, Nico Collins, a running back nursing an ankle injury, Joe Mixon, and an offensive line that allowed the 3rd most sacks in the league. Okay, so now you're code switching here. Because you're talking about injuries, which if anyone this season knows anything about injuries, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. But then you're going from injuries, talking about injuries here, to talking about a faulty unit. The offensive line for the Texans. Well, everyone in the NFL has a faulty unit, do they not? Everyone in the NFL has a weakness on their roster, do they not? The Kansas City Chiefs luckily have the tools to take advantage of that. This should have been a mismatch in favor of Kansas City. Instead, the Texans trailed by 8 points in the 4th quarter and could have made the game more interesting with better special teams plays and fewer penalties. Another way to look at that, the Texans never had a lead. The Texans tied the game, I believe that was in the 3rd quarter when they exchanged field goals, and after that, They didn't control the game. Not ever. Despite ending the half with the ball and beginning the half with the ball. Okay, but we can move on. We can move on. To be fair, some controversial officiating calls didn't help Houston's cause. There were some pretty bad no calls the other way as well. There's no question the Chiefs will be tough to beat in the next round, as they've been to 4 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. It's also fair to wonder if that defense can hold up against a healthier offense that can generate a lot of points. Now, here's the thing. I understand this article is not being written for Chiefs fans. In fact, this article is probably being written for basically everyone except for Chiefs fans. No one's reading this article and saying, golly, I hope the Chiefs can win it. Mainly, I have faith in all of you that you're not looking at mainstream media. You're coming to the YouTubes, to me, to All Chiefed Up, to How About Those Chiefs. There's 1,000 YouTube channels about the Chiefs right now. I trust you that you're coming here. Mr. Judea knows that as well. So he's writing this article for absolutely everyone but the Chiefs. Those anti-red and gold colored lenses on his glasses in this article, silly. But here's the number one thing I have to say. The Chiefs, he mentioned third downs here. The Chiefs have been garbage on third down all season. Absolutely wildly bad on third downs. And they were 4th in points surrendered per game. Didn't matter. Third down didn't matter. Somehow, third down didn't matter. Do you want to rely on third down not mattering against Josh Allen? You don't. But it hasn't mattered. And the Chiefs have been 4th in the NFL in points per game allowed. Also, in that schedule, the schedule through which they were 4th in the NFL in points per game, they played 9 playoff teams, or nine games against playoff opponents. There were 2 doubled up and 1 without their starters. And if they had played even just a couple more starters, it's difficult to see the Denver Broncos having scored as many points as they did in the final game of the season. And if they didn't, that points per game allowed would have been even better. But the Kansas City Chiefs had enough wins by the final week of the season that the entire number 1 seed was wrapped up and they didn't have to touch the field. They could have waved the white flag. They could have stayed on the bus and they would have been the number 1 seed. They could have sent you and me on the field in shoulder pads and they would have been the number 1 seed. It did not matter. Plus, after that, so I think their points per game surrendered was like 19.4, something like that. Then they get into the playoffs, and in the divisional round of the playoffs, they surrender just 14 points. Their defense surrenders just 12. And you're making the point that the defense is not as dominant as it seems. The number 2 point that I have to contest this is just this. Jalen Watson is back, baby. Jalen Watson, the big swinging second corner for the Kansas City Chiefs, is back on the field. And I don't think he looked full strength against the Texans. I really don't. Maybe I am remembering Jalen Watson better than he really was because of the Najee Johnson effect that came afterwards. But he was definitely, in my opinion, better than Najee Johnson. Jalen Watson is back. Jalen Watson is the big play cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not Trent McDuffie. Trent McDuffie's the best cornerback the Chiefs have. But Jalen Watson's the guy that comes up with interceptions. Nobody's throwing at Trent McDuffie. They think they'll go ahead and chance it and throw the ball against Jalen Watson. It does not always work out. So I believe twice this season, maybe 3 times this season, Najee Johnson surrendered a perfect passer rating. That's not going to be on the field nearly as much with Jalen Watson back. An opportunity for a perfect passer rating to a specific point on the field is not going to be as prevalent in the AFC Championship game as it was in the games that allowed the Kansas City Chiefs to appear in the AFC Championship game. And here's the last point I want to make here. Is the defense as dominant as it seems? Maybe not. I don't 100% know what that means, right? What does dominant mean? Is it a number? 4th in the NFL in points per game. Pretty good. Seems dominant to me. The third down statistics, not great. Terrible, miserable, awful, no good, very bad. This team, however, is playing in the AFC Championship game. That is a different brand of football. Everyone in the NFL concedes this. No one can quantify it, but everyone concedes this. There was an interview not too long ago. One of these Hall of Fame quarterbacks, I believe it might have been Drew Brees, it may have been Peyton Manning, says that there's 3 speeds in the NFL. There's preseason speed, there's regular season speed, or there's 4 speeds: preseason speed, regular season speed, divisional rival speed, and then there's the playoffs. Everyone who has touched the field in the NFL says there is a difference when you get to the playoffs. I'm willing to accept that. You know who else is willing to accept that? All 53 guys on the Kansas City Chiefs active roster. All 53 guys on the Bills, on the Commanders, on the Eagles. All of them are playing football at a different level than they had to play all the livelong season, correct? Guys, here's where I'm going with this. There might not be a single team in the history of football. I don't know how to look into this. If you have any way to look into this, please let me know. Or if you want to do the figuring yourself, be a hero. There may not be a single team in the history of football with as much postseason experience as this season's AFC Championship game Kansas City Chiefs. Trent McDuffie has never lost a playoff game. You go back one season to the class before them, Creed Humphrey. In Creed Humphrey's entire career, there is a single playoff game. No, there's a single playoff game that he has not appeared in. They went to an AFC Championship game, did not get to the Super Bowl. In his entire career, Guys, he's coming up on the end of his rookie contract. There is a single weekend of NFL playoff football for which he was not active. He skipped the first round a couple times, but he's still on an active roster. This team might have more experience than any team ever has had going into an AFC Championship game. More playoff experience. And so another little strange quirk with the Kansas City Chiefs, the rookies. There's a rookie class on this team that has only one playoff appearance, one playoff win. There's only a couple rookies on this team that get meaningful playing time. One of them is Xavier Worthy. And guys, if you're talking about the game moving at a different speed, all that means is the game gets closer to Xavier Worthy's speed. Fastest 40 in the history of the Combine. The game gets closer to him in the playoffs. And against the Texans, he looked pretty good. Against the Texans, he made a fantastic catch. Against the Texans, he looked like a veteran, the very same way that by the time Rashee Rice got to the playoffs, he was evolving his game. We're starting to see the very same thing from Xavier Worthy, and it makes me wonder if all of a sudden we're going to start getting more downfield shots to Xavier Worthy. Every once in a while, maybe, in the AFC Championship game, like the last time the Kansas City Chiefs played the Bills, Patrick Mahomes is going to uncork one. The first time the Chiefs played the Bills this season, Xavier Worthy was open. Xavier Worthy had 5 yards of separation. Xavier Worthy caught the ball, but he was out of bounds. The ball was thrown decently. He just did not adjust his stride. If that same thing happens in the AFC Championship game, I dare say, guys, it's 7 points. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Kansas City Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. We're coming up on 2 years now of daily consecutive uploads. So consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more Chiefs content, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.